Hey guys, happy Wednesday! And it's unusual that we're here in your Max Cellular Week. We're so happy today in this Wednesday because guess what? It's our first anniversary of the Design Your Physician Life podcast. We would have never thought we would be here. We're very grateful and we're really celebrating the podcast and all of those who have made that podcast a reality. Our team, our guests who have been at the podcast and our listeners. So thank you very much for this year. And I have a surprise for you if you've ever thought about doing a podcast. Now that we have a year under our belt, then we want to give you some tips about how to do podcasting yourself if you're interested. One of the things that we're grateful for today is because it's International Women's Day. And today we want to celebrate our team. We have a team of wonderful women in our different businesses. And not only that, we want to dedicate this celebration to one special one. Pau, this celebration is for you. Thank you for all you do every day for us, for our team, for our podcast. And we hope that you're doing really well, and we want to see you soon back in this team. We're waiting for you, and we're rooting for you. Hugs to you and your family. Then, International Women's Day. Women's Day, you guys from all over the world. Here, Kate, we have Kate Shandia. She's a wonderful woman coming with us to this team from the Philippines. So thank you for being here, Kate Shandia. And then all the way to Puerto Rico. My mom, my sister, my aunts, my cousins, obviously, all the family and friends. Thank you for all you do for our world, for our families, for our communities. And then in our business too, we also have there our team. So thanks, Martha, for doing everything that you do for our patients, our partners, Arun, Miranda, I love you both. Dr. Denise Baker, who's joined our team recently, Ariel, who has joined our team as well, and all our patients, friends, and our community. So thank you for being part of everything that we're doing. And then a bonus for the news is that we were chosen again top doctor for this year, 2023, here in Sarasota. So I'm extremely happy. Thank you for all the confidence that all the physicians have had through the years in our work. And because of that work that we do, we decided to elevate it, and now we are doing the Saha Vida Institute here in Sarasota, Florida. So thank you. And now to celebrate our first year of the podcast, we cannot say thanks enough to the master of the podcast, Tomas Rodriguez. He is the head behind the scenes, and I really want to make sure that all of you say hello, Tomas. Thank you for all the work that you do, because without him there is no podcast. And our guests, obviously our guests who come from all over the United States to help our physicians. So now for our bonus, our tip, our thing that I wanted to do for you guys today, since we have now 1 year under the belt, as I said, of podcasting, we want to tell you how to do your podcast. We've had that question. That question was actually asked to me earlier this last week by one of our physician friends. She was asking me, how do I do a podcast? And I say, we're going to get you covered. We have you covered here. First, before starting your podcast, you really have to choose your why, right? Usually, when we have a situation, which is your state, and you want to define your state, which would be your new life with your podcast, and you have to define what your life would look like with your podcast in your life, then the how to do that is much easier. So first, why do you want to do a podcast? In our case, we had the Max Cellular Mastermind, which is a professional and personal development program for physicians. And I know that not everybody can participate in our masterminds. So what we did is that we decided to do the podcast so that we can give a lot of tips to our physicians so that they can regain and retain and remain in control of their physicians' lives. So that's our why. We want to really help physicians to continue to be the best advocates of our patients in our communities. And this is the way that I found a solution from burnout through entrepreneurship. And that's why our podcast was born. So once you have your why, you have, doing the how it's going to be done is going to be much easier. In our case, I wanted to be audio. I didn't want to be showcasing my face. Why? Because I just don't like makeup, and yeah, you've seen me a lot with makeup, and it takes a lot of work, and just I didn't want to have that pressure because I didn't know where I was going to be recording. And that's one of the things that you have to choose. If you're going to be recording, which hours are you going to be doing that? And for doing that, you have to choose, am I going to be the only one on that podcast? Am I going to have guests on that podcast? Because that changes it all. Trust me, like I've been scheduling. We have now 53 podcasts posted as of this last week. The last one with Dr. Lori Bosch from Green Cloud. And please go and don't miss that podcast. So you really have to learn yourself. You have to know yourself. And if you're going to have enough material to give to the world without having guests, what the length of the podcast is going to be, when you're going to be recording that podcast. So as soon as you know all those things about yourself and about what you want to offer, then you can do some planning. For our planning, because there are so many people involved, I did get assistance. So these are the people behind the scenes. The other things that you have to choose, so between if it's a video or just audio, is who's going to help you process it if you're going to be processing that podcast. For us, we have somebody, Tomas, he processes our podcast. We have Pau, who schedules people on the podcast. And then we have a way of distributing that podcast, which is Shandia, who's helping us, and she helps us with the social media. So it's really a team for a podcast. Little details, which are huge details. If you want just audio, in our case, we are doing videos via Zoom. And I say videos because that allows me to talk to the guest on a real time, like I can have a conversation, so it sounds more natural. And for that Zoom recording, we take that audio and then we process that audio. We really are not using the visuals. We have decided not to use them. You can repurpose that. I know of some podcasters who basically they do a Zoom call and then they record the whole thing. They go live there, or you can use like a Facebook Live, or there's some other tools where you can transmit at the same time in different platforms, and we've used that one too. But we found for us that it's easier to do the Zoom, and I talk to them, and then we extract the audio from there, and then we publish that audio. There's a different place where you can have really great audio and video, which is riverside.fm. We're not using that one. We've thought about it, but that's, if you want to go to the next level, we would recommend that. And I have no affiliations with anybody. I'm just giving you some tips of the things that I know as a 1-year-old podcaster. The other things is equipment, materials. What are you going to do? Well, you can record in your home, you can record in your office, depending on where you're going to record. You can do your studio. In our case, we don't have a studio in particular. I have a place where I record most of our podcasts. I can record depending on where I'm gonna be. We have decided not to have just one place. So I have something that I can transport with me. It's a little device like this that I can record, and some of my first recordings, our first podcasts, were done with that little device. But now I do it just through the Zoom, wherever I am. Ideally, our team has told us that they would like everything to be done the same day, the same time, not the same day, but in the same space and the same, with the same tones and everything around us. Ideally, that's what you want, because it makes it easier. It makes it easier for the person who's going to be processing that podcast. And ideally, we want to control a lot of what the guest is doing. That's a very challenging thing, because guests, like anybody, we all have lives, and they might be traveling. I've had people who are at the beach doing the podcast. I have people who are in their home. I have people who are in their own studios doing the podcast. So it's going to vary, and it depends on the quality. So as I said, there's some people who just record the whole thing, and they don't only record the whole thing, they do the live for that. They don't process. They go and take the same recording and put it in different areas without processing. We process it, and we have an intro. We have done an intro. You have to think about the music, which you can get for free online. You can have the intro and the outro recorded by yourself. You can have somebody else do that for you, or you can have a combination of both things, and we have that combination. So we have chosen Tomas Rodriguez's voice. If you see, he's the intro, and then we have some music that we chose online. And our son, who loves music, he's a musician. He helped us choose the music too. And then voila. A title is going to be depending on what you want, what your podcast is about. So hopefully it should be simple. The same thing for the picture. Should be, a picture that portrays what you're trying to talk about or say. Some people are more artistic with their podcasts, and, it depends on what you're doing a podcast for. Then, how are you going to publish that podcast? We use Buzzsprout, Buzzsprout. So if you go online, if you see here, Shandia already wrote there our podcast, it's maxalure.buzzsprout.com. And what happens is that once you choose, once again, I don't have any affiliate with them. That's the tool that we've been using. It's been easiest for us. And then you're gonna have like your name of your website, and then .buzzsprout.com. So our website is Maxalure. It's not Design Your Physician Life, but it's Maxalure, and then .buzzsprout.com. So that's our the platform that we're using. From that, they publish it to the world. So it goes like to all your Apple, your Google, all the podcast platforms themselves. They distribute that for you. There's some other things that go into podcasting. You might want to, we choose titles for our podcast. We choose to either transcribe the podcast or not, or you can choose to put each title per section, like you, from here to here we talk about this, from here to there we talk about that. And that's a lot of work that Tomas is doing actually behind the scenes. So we're really grateful for that. So that's some about podcasting. I didn't tell you about, the equipment. So in terms of the equipment for the podcast, microphones. Really, it should be a microphone that you're comfortable with. In our case, we wanted something portable, so that's what I'm using. And you can go to any, like sound store and buy it. You can buy it also online. We also have, besides the podcast, besides the microphone, you need your headphones to really really hear well for the podcast. Obviously, this system that I'm using right now is not the best for a podcast if you want a high quality podcast. Then the other thing I was going to tell you, we have a little box that we put between the microphone and the headphones and the computer. So that helps us process. And the one that we use is called Focusrite. And with that box, you get better sound quality as well. So that's something for you to consider. So that's been like most of what I know about our podcast. The other thing is like, you have a programming, right? So you have to do a programming of what you want to achieve, the things that you want to do when you're talking to your guests. Not everybody's going to say yes. So if you want guests, you have to make a lot of calls, a lot of coordinating, choosing your times. The times that are my times might not be the times that they want to record. I know people who do their podcast at 6 in the morning Eastern Standard Time, and they're not changing that. And I've been to those podcasts. So it depends what you want to do. So for podcasting, it takes a little bit of work. As I've said, it's not difficult. The most important thing really is find your passion about it. Once you find your passion, educate yourself about how you're going to do what you want to achieve with your podcast. I didn't talk about monetizing the podcast. That's not something that we're doing right now. Yes, that's something that many people will do, and they want to do podcasting as a business. That will be a question for somebody else. But I really hope that you continue to support the Design Your Physician Life podcast. Go and listen to this week's story from Dr. Bosch and how she created Green Cloud Apparel. And I hope that we can meet in another year and celebrate another year of Design Your Physician Life podcast. Thank you very much. Thank you. Happy International Women's Day. Thanks, Sarasota, for choosing us again as a top doctor in our community. And we'll see you. Have a great day. I'll see you on Friday with Dr. Lori Bosch, was our guest yesterday in our podcast, Design Your Physician Life. Have a great day.